Greetings. Thokozani bogogo nabomkhulu. This is Nomathemba Dzinochkiwe. I trust you're having an amazing day. It does feel like a Monday, even though it is a Tuesday after the holidays. I'm filming out in the garden today because our inverter is still charging with the load shedding. I don't know if I'll ever get complete quiet to be able to shoot a video. So I'm out here in the garden. You can hear the birds. So no music today. We just have the sound of the birds. You'll probably see the chickens wandering around in the video. We have two of them. One of them is already a TikTok star. I posted her last year on TikTok, where she literally fought with me for a bag of chips, an empty bag of chips. But yeah, we move. So today we're talking about self-initiation. As I've shared on my previous videos, I don't have a formal mentor. I didn't go to formal initiation. In isiZulu we would say anyanga epehlweni, which is what you'd probably equate that to the crucible where you melt gold or metals and you get the finished product. So anyanga epehlweni, I haven't been for formal initiation. I have been working with my ancestors and my spirit guides and taking the instructions that they give me, and that is how I started my journey. I shared a little bit about how I started my journey, and I just want to make this short video just to talk about self-initiation. There are other videos on self-initiation. There are other healers who have self-initiated. You can search for those videos online and you'll find them. It's really just a matter of spending time in prayer, spending time in meditation, learning about your ancestors, learning about your history, allowing them to lead you to resources and people, places, and situations for your learning. There are tests along the way, in different kinds of tests, and I will go into that. But for me, the primary foundation of being able to go through initiation on your own, it's very important to understand that even with self-initiation, it doesn't mean you isolate yourself, you don't talk to anybody. You still can learn from other healers, you learn certain things. You still do need to go through certain processes, such as cleansing. For instance, if you have certain ancestors that are traumatized, if you've had certain things that have happened in your family history, in your bloodline, that require a cleansing. The cleansing is just there to make sure that your energy field is free of any spiritual ties, any attachments, any negativity, any negative energy that evil spirits or negative entities can latch onto or hook onto and feed off. So that is the purpose of the cleansings, and there are different kinds of cleansings. But the most common is being taken to the river or the ocean, depending on where your guides lead you. Ideally, you should work with a healer who is qualified, if I can call it that, or who is capable, so that they can take you to that water body for a cleansing. Water cleansings can be dangerous. So that's why it's important to work with an experienced healer who is able to read the signs and understand what's happening in the spirit and know if they're doing the right thing. And they'll also be able to check whether the process has worked or not. So that's very important. The cleansing is very important. So you may need to do that, especially at the start of your journey, to just make sure that your energy field is clear. There is no interference, because sometimes that negative energy means that there will be interference in your communication with your guides, and you don't want that. I'm just going to move my camera a bit because I think the tree is casting a shadow, and hopefully then you can still see me. But I do like sitting out here in the garden when I can. It's lovely and peaceful, and the birds are always singing out here. We do find that they fight with the chickens for the chicken feed, but they eventually do sort themselves out. There is always abundance and enough food for everybody. And I think that's a principle we still also need to learn as human beings. But just back to the initiation journey, once you have cleansed, you should then start to get clear dreams, clear messages, visions, insights from your intuition. Those are the things that help you along your journey. And it's important to pray. I don't believe personally that you can self initiate if you don't pray. You need to be a person who prays. You need to be somebody who speaks to your ancestors. You need to be in touch with spirit. You need to meditate, because at some point you need to still your mind, calm your thoughts, and be able to distinguish situations and energies, whether this is something that is your emotions or it's somebody else's emotions, whether it is, ancestral trauma that's doing the talking, or an entity or an evil spirit. And you can only do that when you pray, when you meditate, when you discern, because you really need to understand your own thoughts and your own processes in order to really get the right message. So the processes of initiation, not very different from what happens with formal initiation, epehlweni. There's a healing process, which is what the cleansing helps with. There is also a process of learning, so that you can communicate with your ancestors, they can communicate with you, you get clear messages, because you need the messages for yourself and for other people. So you will need to know when you start working with people whether a process is working or not working, or you need to try something else, or whether you're even capable of a process, because self-initiating doesn't necessarily mean you have the experience or the specialization to do every kind of spiritual process. Personally, I tell people that I can't do river cleansings. I don't feel I am at that level already, as much as my guides have come with, the gift to be the ability to work with water. I'm not at a point where I feel I can take someone to the river for a cleansing. Maybe it will come in future, maybe not. So it's important that you understand what you can do with the ability that you have and the knowledge and the experience, and when you need to work with another healer, or when you need to refer someone to another healer. So I will refer people if there's certain things that I can see they need, but I can't do them. I don't try and do it myself or do it all. It's a recipe for disaster, because we really are playing in the space, or working in a space where people's lives are at stake. These are matters of life and death. So you don't want a situation where you think you can do something, you want to experiment, it goes wrong, somebody's situation either gets worse, they get sick or they die. You don't want that. So you really want to make sure that you listen to your intuition, you follow your dreams, you listen to your guides, you take the instructions, and you don't overdo things, or you don't try and do things that are beyond your capability. A lot of the times we talk about scammers in the spiritual space. Yes, I believe there are people that purposely go out there and scam people and pretend they can do certain processes for people that they can't. But I also believe that sometimes it's someone who overestimates their ability. They think they can do this, they think it's easy, but it's not easy. You take someone to the river for a cleansing, you have no relationship with the deity that rules that body of water. Next thing, that person drowns, or you drown, or the both of you drown. And that's something that you just don't want to see happening. We've had quite a few incidents of drownings of healers and the initiates, or the people that they're taking for healing, in different water bodies. There is a protocol that you follow when you visit the water body. You don't just somewhere go and jump in and do your thing. Ideally you should fast, you should pray and speak to your ancestors, and the person that is being healed or taken to the water for the cleansing, they should also do the same, pray and fast. You should abstain from sex at least 24 hours before you go to the river. Same applies when you go to the mountain. These are holy places that are inhabited by powerful spiritual entities and deities. And if you're going there to appeal and appease and ask for good things, then you need to make sure that you're clean. Just like you would take a shower, dress up properly to go to a party. The same applies when you go to the river or you go to the mountain or to go to any other sacred place. There is a code of conduct, there is a protocol, there's a way in which you need to conduct yourself. So it's very important that you follow those instructions, and your guides can help you in terms of making sure that you can do these things so that you don't put yourself or anybody else in danger when you go to that sacred place. So I've mentioned the cleansing and talked about that in a bit more detail. I would just like to talk about prayer. So prayer is primarily talking to God. It takes faith and a belief that there is a higher power, a greater being that is able to hear our requests, accept our requests, and do the things that he asks of us. As a Christian, I follow the Christian model of prayer. You can use the Lord's Prayer, which is Jesus taught the disciples in the book of Matthew. It's in the New Testament. You can, and it's fairly common. You can find it almost everywhere. We probably all know the Lord's Prayer. It's a very good model for prayer. Generally, you want to show that you acknowledge God's supremacy in your life. So you use elements of praise, of adoration, just to show that you know that you're a lesser being compared to God, and God or the Creator is able to grant you what you're asking for. So you've got to first acknowledge the supremacy of God. That's a very essential part of prayer. You've also got to acknowledge the goodness and the love of God, because God is love. The foundational principle of the spirit and the universe is love. Dr. Caroline Leaf says, as human beings, we're wired for love. We're designed for love. We're not designed for hate or any kind of lower vibrational emotion. We're wired for love. So it's important that you acknowledge God's love for you. And God's love is evident in everything that is happening around us. The fact that we woke up this morning and we saw this day, that is actually an evidence of God's love for us, because there are other people that didn't make it. There are other people that didn't wake up this morning. There are other people that have passed away during the course of the day. But the fact that we are still here means that God loves us. So we acknowledge that when we pray. We also confess when we have not done the right thing. Sometimes we don't do the right thing by God or by other people, knowingly or unknowingly. This is what we call confession in the Christian faith. So it's important to confess when we've done wrong, just like we do with our ancestors when we know things have not gone right or we haven't done the right thing. We call it ukushweleza in isiZulu, which is to ask for forgiveness, to confess your sins and to ask for forgiveness. So you do the same thing with prayer. When you know that you haven't done the thing that you're supposed to do, or you've done the thing that you're not supposed to do, because we depend on God's mercy, we depend on God's forgiveness, so we pray. We then also take the opportunity to ask for what we need and ask for what we want, and God will grant things in good time according to his riches and mercy, depending on what you need. It's very important to distinguish needs from wants, because needs mean things like food, clothing, shelter, safety, security. Those are needs. God knows that we need these things, so he grants them to us. And then there's wants, so that for me, the difference between a want and a need is a jacket for winter, and a want is maybe a Chanel jacket for winter, which is designer, it's expensive, it's high end, and all of those things. So for me, it's important that we distinguish wants and needs. And I see it is late afternoon, so the shadows are being cast. it is important that we ask for what we need. And if we want something, God has the power to grant it to us. Um, there's nothing wrong with asking for what you want. It's just really important that you are very clear about what you want. You're very clear about your needs. You're unequivocal. And you actually believe. The foundational principle of prayer is that you must believe for what you're asking for. If you doubt, then you don't get what you ask for. And the same applies with self initiation in the spiritual journey. So when you pray for protection, as you commune with your ancestors and as you embark on your journey and you start to work with these different spirits and entities, you need to believe that God will send guardians that will take care of you, that He will send messengers that will give you the messages that you need to hear at the right time. You need to acknowledge that God can do that. You need to believe that God can do that. So prayer for me is very important. If you're doing any kind of spiritual work in any tradition, you need to pray, because prayer is talking to the deities, it's talking to the Creator, it's talking to God. And the people that carry your prayers, that carry your petitions and your requests, are your ancestors, your guardian angels, the various deities. Some of them have the power to grant what you are asking for. Others need to still go and petition the Creator on your behalf so that you can get what you're asking for. So I think those things are very important when we talk about prayer and when we talk about the spiritual journey. It's important to also understand how to speak to your ancestors. I watched a very good YouTube video. I forget the name of the channel. I'll see if I can link it in the comments when I find it. But she says, for instance, if you belong to the Ifa tradition and you work with deities such as Yemaya or Oshun or Eshu or Shango, there are many, right? It's still important to work with your ancestors, because these are deities, and deities are more universal in nature. They work with millions of other people. But your ancestors are personal to you. They know your needs. They know the problems that are in your bloodline. They know the things that require resolution. So you need to speak to them so that they can intercede for you. They can work with the deities. They can convey the messages that you need to hear. They can tell you what you need to do when you need to do it. Then you're not likely to find yourself in a situation where negative energies can come in, take advantage of the connection, pretend to be, Oshun or Yemaya, and lead you astray, or get you into a coven of witches, which is something that I'll talk about just now. But it's very important when you're on a spiritual journey to work with your ancestors, because the spiritual gift is inherited from the ancestors in your lineage and in your bloodline. They themselves would have worked with God, with the angels, with the deities. And if you belong to any other tradition, your ancestors would have worked with, for instance, Buddha or Krishna or whatever deity in that tradition. So don't leave your ancestors out of the equation if you're gifted, because that gift actually comes through from them and down through your bloodline. So it's very important that we don't leave our ancestors out when we are doing spiritual work, that we take our guidance from them, and that we get our understanding and knowledge from them as well. So ancestral communication is important. You may not necessarily have to do it every day, but you do need to speak to your ancestors often if you are spiritually gifted, and especially if you're working with people, because for you to get clients, for people to come to you for help, there would have been a connection between that person's ancestors and yours. I'd like that to sink in for a moment. Before you meet a client or an initiate or work with someone using your spiritual gifts, the connection happens in the spirit. And the people that are in the spirit are your ancestors and that person's ancestors. So it's important that you speak to your ancestors, because they will convey the message that comes from that person's ancestors to you. They will allow you to be connected so that you can meet, and they will also then facilitate whatever messages need to come through, whatever your tools you're using, whether you're using divining bones or runes or tarot cards or water or whatever. Your ancestors are the ones that facilitate that. So it's important that you have regular communication with your ancestors. Self-initiation is about your ancestors working with you, guiding you, teaching you. So we call it self-initiation because we're just saying that you don't have another person that is playing the role of a mentor on a regular basis, like you would if you went for formal initiation. However, it's your ancestors that are working with you. So they will communicate with you either through dreams or through your intuition, or they will send a person to speak to you, or they will make things pop up on your timeline on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. They will use whatever method they need to convey the message to teach you. So sometimes you'll find that you will have a dream about an animal print. Let's say it's Ipaile Puvezi, the white lion, right? There's symbolism that is embedded in that print, starting with the color white. Then we go into the pattern itself, the colors of the pattern, red, white, and black, for instance, like the one that I've shown on my previous video. They will show you that print for a reason. Either they're showing it to you for you to wear, because there's an ancestor that resonates with that print and they want you to work with that ancestor, so you put that particular print on. Or they will show you that print for someone else. Maybe there's somebody else that you're working with and that person's ancestors says, I need this person to take up this particular print and wear it when they're praying or whatever, so that I as an ancestor can draw closer to that person and have the conversation and teach them and protect them and guide them, do whatever needs to happen. So dreams are one way that your ancestors communicate with you. Sometimes intuition is one way your ancestors communicate with you. So you'll find that you didn't have a dream, but you walk into the shop. Like I like to go to the shops on Diagonal Street to get my prints. The first time I was shown the cheetah print, in my dream it had a red, it had a red border. But when I then went to the shop, I happened to see the same print but with a maroon border. And when I just really liked the one with the maroon border, and I bought it and I kept it, and eventually I started wearing it. The important thing when you buy a print or you buy beads or whatever tool you're shown, the first thing you do is to show them to your ancestors. I would light a candle, and the color that I was shown that I used to communicate with my ancestors. It's not the same for everybody, but I would light a candle, and when I do my prayers and my meditation and speak to my ancestors, I show them this. I've bought this thing. I bought it because I liked it, or I bought this thing that you showed me in a dream. Please accept it, please bless it, and give me any other instructions that I need to use it. I've had dreams where I have bought a certain print and it's folded. I'm not wearing it, nobody's wearing it, and I just taken the meaning that I need to buy it and keep it, not necessarily wear it. And when I pray and when I pasha and I tell them and I say, okay, I've bought the print, I've kept it folded, are there any other instructions? Some are not forthcoming, so I'll keep it folded. Sometimes then my intuition will tell me, oh no, you need to give this print to so and so, or you need to give this print to a member of your family, or whatever. So that's some of how it works, at least in my experience. That you get the instructions and you follow them. But whatever you buy, whether it is a candle, a different color candle, whether it's beads, whether it's a print, whether it's tarot cards, uyabiga, you tell them, this is what I bought, thokozani bogogo nabomkhulu, ngithengile lento eningibonisile, if it came in a dream, or ngicabanga ukuthi lento ingasebenza, and you show them. If you go, one of my healer friends actually taught me that if you go to another healer and that healer gives you herbal medicine to use or whatever to use, again, do the same thing. Uyahamba, uya emsamo, you go to your altar, you speak to your ancestors. Uyabiga, you tell them, this is what I've been given by so and so to use, so that they accept the tool and they also work with it with you. Because remember, they're in spirit, you're in the flesh. We say, as within, so without, as above, so below. So whatever you are doing in the natural needs to align with whatever they're doing in the spiritual. And that is how your self-initiation journey will go smoothly, because it means you're working together with your ancestors. You're not working against them. You're not in conflict. You're not wondering whether this is the right thing or not. You're getting very clear guidance and clear instructions. So that is, for me, very important, that you have that discussion, you have that interaction, you get those instructions, you get that clarity, and you get that guidance. So there's no one size fits all formula to say you start with this, you do this, and you do that. All initiation, self-initiation requires is for you to first of all pray, then communicate with your ancestors, listen for the guidance internally. You need to maintain a regular spiritual practice. So you need to pray, you need to meditate, and if you are feeling led, you need to speak to your ancestors. And there's a common question around women, particularly when you're menstruating. Can you speak to your ancestors? Can you do that? And the answer is yes. The truth of the matter is, you're a woman, you have periods, you have menses, you go, the menstrual cycle is part of your reproductive cycle. Without your menstrual cycle, you can't have children. If you don't menstruate, it means you don't ovulate, it means you can't fall pregnant. So your ancestors understand that, right? So there's nothing wrong with upahla when you're on your periods. There's nothing that stops you from doing upahla or speaking to your ancestors when you're pregnant. The most important thing about speaking to your ancestors is your intention. You must have an intention to connect. You must want to speak to them, just like any other relationship. There are times when maybe a friend calls you and they're just calling you for the sake of calling you. They don't really want to talk to you, but they just don't want to seem like they're rude or whatever. There's nothing wrong with not calling if you don't feel like talking. You don't have to pattern every day, but if you want to, go ahead. If it's during your periods, go ahead. Nothing stops you. There are those of us that do spiritual work. If I have a reading and it's during my periods, I still have to practice for my tarot readings so that the messages come through. And I've never had a problem. So don't feel like you can't speak to your ancestors because it's your period, right? People that spread that propaganda maybe have very strict and specific types of ancestors, or maybe they're men who don't menstruate, so they have no idea of what actually happens with a woman and her body during menstruation. In fact, some healers who are female actually say the connection is even stronger during that time when you're on your period. So you should go ahead and speak to your ancestors if you need to. I've heard questions about impepo, ukushunqisa impepo. Can you use impepo when you're a woman? There's some cultures and traditions and families where it's a no-no, but there are other families and traditions where it's fine. So if you need ukushunqisa impepo, go ahead, do it. If you feel led, if it so happens that you're in a family that is very traditional and there is an older member of the family who is male, allow that person to be the one that lights up impepo for you if it's on behalf of the family. But if it's for you personally, nothing stops you from um, lighting up impepo and using it to communicate with your ancestors. So you just need to understand your origins, where your bloodline and your lineage, the people in your family, where they come from, because different families have different traditions when they speak to their ancestors and they speak to spirit. So there's a general guideline. If you have Khoisan ancestors, you can use impepo because the Khoisan were the people, or the Khoi were the people that actually taught Abenguni to use impepo. Impepo grows freely all over southern Africa. I've seen it growing in Zimbabwe. There are two types that actually grow in my mother-in-law's yard. She doesn't know how to use it. It's fine. Because when people from further Africa, up north in Africa, came down into southern Africa, they didn't use impepo. If you have Ndau guides, your people are from Zimbabwe, from Chipinge, from I believe parts of Zambia, Mozambique, um, certain parts of South Africa, like in Limpopo, in the northern part of KZN, you generally don't necessarily use impepo to communicate with your ancestors. You can use ground tobacco or snuff. There are different kinds of snuff. Um, but the one that is sold in the black container at the Muti market that works well. You can use taxi snuff. I used taxi snuff from Pick and Pay for the first few months when I started my journey. It does the job. It's not the best, but it does the job. As you go deeper and as you learn more, then your ancestors will show you what they want or what they prefer. But you can just use ground tobacco. People of Ndau origin generally they pasha outside. You find a tree, preferably an indigenous species of tree, because every tree has a spirit or spirits that hang around it. So you want a tree of that is indigenous, and you just use your intuition to identify the right spot where you want to pasha, and you put a mat on the ground or kneel directly on the ground, it's fine, or you can sit and you sprinkle your snuff on the ground and you clap and you start your session. Maybe one of these days I will demonstrate how that's done. I'm trying to keep my videos short because I mean, bandwidth, data, load shedding. Um, but it's important to speak to your ancestors and get their guidance. And whatever they show you, do it. If you feel the need to reach out to another healer for advice or to clarify something, do that. If you feel that you're not getting the clarity, by all means consult and, you know, get a reading done. You might want to first pasha and pray so that you speak to the right healer that your ancestors want to speak through, because sometimes you'll go to a healer because they're famous, or them, or they give good testimonies, they make great YouTube videos, but they're not necessarily the person that your ancestors want to speak through. So just be very careful. Make sure that before you even go to the consultation, you do let your ancestors know that you're going to see a particular person, so that when they see that person doing their inquiries and reaching into your Akashic records, they are not surprised and put up their guards and lock everything down, because they do that. I've gone for readings where I've told my ancestors I'm going to see healer so and so, Mkulu so and so, Koko so and so, and I get there, we do the reading, but it doesn't resonate. The messages aren't coming through, and that's because my guides can be particularly fussy about who reads my energy. And there's certain things that they don't want these people to know for their own reasons. So it's very important, when you need to, as part of your journey, if you're not getting the answers or the clarity, do reach out to another healer, do consult. And as you go with time, you'll start to actually experience the joy of walking with your ancestors, working with God, working with your deities, people will now start coming to you for advice. When you're naturally gifted spiritually, people will come by themselves. You don't need to advertise. There's some people that will come when you're actually thinking, I really didn't want to do a reading today, but because some of these things are life and death situations, sometimes people are suicidal, sometimes people are really distressed. One of the things that you develop as a healer is compassion. So allow your compassion to lead you and let your ancestors guide you. And always remember that God and the Creator are the supreme power. And when even when things seem bleak, just go on your knees, pray, and things will go well. I trust that you find this video useful and helpful. I really hope that you will really experience the best of God and Spirit, and may your ancestors continue to guide and support you on your journey. And I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day and good evening. And thanks again for all the support. Thank you for all the views. Thank you for your comments. Please continue to engage on all the channels, the social media channels, and we will continue to spread the knowledge. Thank you for watching.